Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with veteran New York City jazz guitarist Steve Cardenas. We caught up with Steve on April 17, 2020, during the COVID-19 quarantine to discuss a number of things, like upcoming projects, what he's been doing in Brooklyn during the jazz shutdown, and his beginnings in Kansas City. He talked about playing with heroes and legends like Paul Motian, Charlie Haden, Steve Swallow, and many others. We also talked about a lot of other things, so please get to know Steve and dig this interview, my friends.
How's everything going with you?
Good. Just, busy with a lot of online stuff.
Yeah. It's a new world for sure. Are you up there in New York now?
Yeah, in Brooklyn, just hunkering down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what everybody's doing. Well, and hopefully at this point we've been in this long enough that we're starting to see the other side of things.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, hey, Steve, thank you for taking a little bit of time to talk with Neon Jazz here. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Let's kind of talk about your latest album, Somewhere Else, West Side Story Songs. Talk to me a little bit about this recording and just kind of maybe what's been going on during quarantine, if you have any new material or anything, how you're approaching this time.
Yeah. Well, that record, it was Ted's idea to do that music, and so he was the leader on that session. Although that trio really began as an idea of Ben's to do the music of Jim Hall and also some Jimmy Dupree music that Jim Hall was also a part of. So and the record that preceded Ted's, Ben was the leader on. We were approached by a record label, New Bell, and we recorded Jim Hall and Jimmy Dupree music. But all along the way, the three of us have just kind of said, it really feels like a cooperative trio. Like whoever's the leader is just more like by default, depending on who got, the record deal with whatever project. So, but Ted had this idea to do the West Side Story music originally for our trip in Cuba, and that was January of 2018. Back when people used to be together. But that was a really amazing and wonderful trip, and I'm losing my train of thought here.
It's all good.
Yeah. And after, so we played two performances in Cuba, one in Santiago de Cuba and then Havana, and both performances were really wonderful. And the one thing we came away with, which Ted was very excited about, was sorry if I sound a little fragmented here, but Ted thought it would be nice to go to Cuba it was Leonard Bernstein's 100th, in 2018, the 100th anniversary of his birth, so Ted thought, hey, let's do West Side Story music, and the three of us researched it, and each of us took a few tunes, and we worked on arrangements that we thought would work for a very pared down trio, and it sounded really nice. And then Ted was very excited about the idea of recording, especially after the Cuba performances. So, and that's how it all came together, essentially.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, and right now we're kind of in this unique time of quarantine, obviously, and everybody's, the music's not happening. So what are you doing? Have you got anything that you're working on or anything? How are you kind of musically passing time?
I recorded a new record in July, actually, that's supposed to come out this July on Sunnyside, and it's all original music. I wrote a new batch of tunes last year, And I have had it in mind to do a project like this for a while. I've never recorded my own music with piano, and John Coward is the piano player on it. And he, I don't know if you're familiar with him, he plays in Brian Blade's Fellowship. And
yeah,
he has his own records. But I play in John's group, the Mercy Project, which Brian also plays in. And I just thought, wow, you know, I'd love to do something with John. He's kind of I wouldn't say the first, but it just really became obvious to me that if I was going to do a record with piano, that John would be perfect for it. And then I also talked to Ben Allison, whose band I've been in for a long time, various bands. And I thought, wow, I bet Ben and John would sound great together. I'll think about drums. I mean, there's certainly wonderful drummers that I've recorded with, and I got to talking to John earlier last year, and I was starting to book dates for the recording, and then John said, hey, you know, those July dates you're talking about, we're playing at the Blue Note with Brian's other group. And he said, he goes, I'm just saying, you ought to see if he could stay an extra couple of days. And so I did. And he was down for it. And I didn't really originally plan on having Brian on the record, simply because I know that though there are logistics involved, he lives in Shreveport, and his schedule gets crazy, but it worked out great. And of course, John Coward and Brian have a long history, and Ben and I have a long history. And then I'd played with John and Brian, so the only unknown was Ben had never played with those guys, but you would never know it. It sounded amazing, and I figured as much going into it.
Talk to me a little bit about, I'm going to go back in time here, and talk to me about your Kansas City roots. You know, you're obviously in New York, and you've been there for a while, but talk to me about the Kansas City years and how much this influenced, you know, who you are and your playing.
Oh, and I think it influenced very much who I am. I didn't leave Kansas City at an early age. I think, you know, I guess musicians leave at different times in their lives, but a lot of musicians, let's say, will go to music school and then maybe go to New York in their early 20s or so. But I didn't end up in New York until, well, I was already into my 30s. So what happened was that I stayed in Kansas City for quite a while into my 20s, to the greater portion of my 20s, simply because I was playing all the time. And I felt like I was growing and playing such a diversity of music. It was an amazing time period. You know, that was primarily the 80s. And like groups that I played in Ida Macbeth's band for about 3 years. And then Stan Kessler had a group called the Flat Five that had Paul Smith on piano, and Ron Vincent was a drummer that lives here now, that was living there in Kansas City at the time. Same with David Brandom, who was the saxophone tenor player. And then who else? Greg Whitfield was playing bass. It was such a fun band. We played, you know, known jazz tunes or lesser known jazz tunes and standards and original tunes. It was a mix. And then there were offshoots from that band, quartets, Stan's quartet. We would play at this place called The Point that had music, oh gosh, I guess it was like about 5 or 6 nights a week. And then there was Harry Starker's on the Plaza, the Sunday night gig, and I could go on. Oh, I got to say, though, playing with Claude Williams was a big part of that too. I had a group with him and Steve Swanson, a guitarist, and Greg Eicher, that was just two guitars, bass, and violin. But Claude, the three of us had the idea to get with Claude and do something more pared down and quieter than a group with drums, and that was an experience and a half. Claude, his history, and he brought a lot to it, needless to say.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Throughout all these years and all of these, places that you've been to and the crowds that you played in front of, what do you like best about being a performer? What's the best part of being a musician for you?
Well, I don't know if I can narrow it down to a best part. There's just a lot of facets that are great. The ability to be able to play music for appreciative audiences, and make a living as a musician. To me, I'm always every day grateful for that. And traveling has been a really amazing part of it. It's not, I think some people get the impression that, you've got a Europe tour, you must stop and go see, it's like, well, we're going to be there for less than 24 hours. We'll be lucky if we get to see anything. But nevertheless, there are those times where you do have a day off, or you have 2 nights in the same place, and you actually do get to do some kind of, turbo tourism, where you're, just trying to see as much as you can in a short amount of time. But that adds a lot to it, just getting to meet so many different people and musicians from all over the world. And also, I've been lucky to play with some of my heroes over the years: Paul Motian's band, and Charlie Haden, Liberation Music Orchestra, Steve Swallow, his quintet, and Carla Blaze, part of 2 of those groups, and Joey Barron's band. I'm currently in Adam Nussbaum's Lead Belly project, and still with Ben Allison and John Coward's group, and so I'm a lucky boy.
Absolutely. Do you remember what the first live jazz show that you ever saw that made you think, man, this is what I want to do with my life?
Well, I don't know if it was like that kind of, moment of enlightenment, just bam. However, I will say that as I was playing guitar going into high school, and I was in at Shawnee Mission South, the school jazz band, and they had a really great band director there, Jim Cochran, and so I was getting exposed to big band jazz and everything, but I had gone to a guitar workshop at Quigley Music that Jerry Hahn was giving. I think I went to a couple of those, and it was kind of over my head at the time, but I was intrigued, and so the wheels were turning at that point. And then my last year of high school, I really kind of dove in. I really got interested, maybe a little more in electric jazz, like Weather Report and Chick Corea and things like that. But that led me to bebop, and I remember going over to my friend Dave Symes' house. His father, Bob, who's a really fine piano player, was having a jam session in his house, and Danny Embry was there. That was the first time I met Danny and heard him, and that blew me away. I think that could have been, that was a significant moment, and like I was, wow, I want to be able to play like that, and I'm still chasing after it. Right on. Danny and Rod Fleeman are my mentors from the early days, and still two of my favorites.
Yeah. So, in this new world that we're living in of no jazz happening, we're going to get to the point where we're going to get back to it. What do you hope both musician and audience member gets from this experience? Maybe a revelation when we all do return to a live environment?
I think I mean, it's everything is just kind of like, projection of what you might think. But what to me is, I think it's very possible that people could come back to it with a deepened sense of just how special all that stuff is. Because when I start thinking about, like, every day people are just flying everywhere and doing things, and so much is happening, and so many records coming out, and your general feeling is like, I barely have enough time to do what I need to do, let alone check everything else out. And but we've had to stop. I mean, not everything stops. We still are trying to just keep above the water with it all. But I think, when we come back, it might be like, wow, this thing that we knew was amazing anyway is really amazing. and it feels so great to be back together. And I don't know, maybe I'm hoping there will just be a deeper appreciation and a deeper sense of caring about at least the arts and each other.
Absolutely. So I got one more question for you, and it's this. Everyone has their perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I don't think of myself as this is trying to do the best I can and offer something. I would always hope that the music I play is something that people want to hear or enjoying, or makes them feel better about where they are in that moment. That sort of thing. I mean, I don't really identify myself with Steve Cardenas, the amazing guitar, because I really think of myself really more as a band player. Anyway, I never thought. Maybe it's why I thought a lot as a leader. I never necessarily had the urge or desire to be the star soloist. For me, playing the music and having the tune and the song be kind of the focal point was always the most important thing for me. Even if it happens to be music that features me or anyone else. I know for me, I got to enjoy the tune that's being played. I don't really care how well somebody's playing the music.
Steve, thank you for taking a little bit of time out. It's obviously an extraordinary time on the planet for everyone going through this. And thank you for all the music. Stay safe. And again, I appreciate.
Oh, Joe, thanks. I hope any of it made sense. I go off the tangents sometimes.
No, dude, it all made sense.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Steve for taking some time out and for all that music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.